The challenge begins. The emergence of the Empire. In the distant future, humanity had become a prominent force in the galaxy. Their rise had been swift, marked by years of struggle, triumphs, and a growing reputation for resilience. But despite their impressive achievements, there was still one thing humanity had yet to prove. Could they do the impossible? It all started when an emergency broadcast was sent to every corner of the galaxy. The planet Syriax, home to billions of inhabitants, was dying. Its core had begun to cool, and its atmosphere was becoming unbreathable. The once thriving world was now slowly suffocating. Scientists from various species had come together, but all their attempts to save Syriax had failed. The situation seemed hopeless. Among the Council of Intergalactic Leaders, a harsh reality began to set in. The problem was simply too big, too complex for any civilization to solve. The galaxy's most advanced species, an empire of highly intelligent beings, the Centaurians, declared, "No one can save this world. It's beyond repair." The Centaurians were renowned for their advanced technology, their wisdom, and their endless knowledge. If they couldn't find a solution, no one could. The decision was made. Syriax would be abandoned, and its people would be relocated to other planets. But there was one voice that spoke up, a human voice. Captain Eliana Gray, a respected leader from Earth, stood before the council. She wasn't an engineer, a scientist, or a politician. She was an ordinary officer with extraordinary resolve. Looking out over the room of powerful alien leaders, she spoke the words that no one expected to hear. "We can do it." Her statement wasn't just bold, it was a challenge. She believed that humanity had the potential to achieve the impossible. The room went silent. Some looked at her with disbelief, others with laughter, but Eliana's eyes were filled with determination. She knew that the galaxy doubted them, but she also knew that humanity had faced incredible odds before and overcome them. The Centaurians exchanged glances, and their leader, Grand Master Jorvok, raised an eyebrow. He was ancient, wise, and had seen more than his fair share of failures. Yet in all his years, he had never heard a human speak so confidently in the face of such a monumental task. "You think your kind can do what no one else can?" Jorvok asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "We will," Eliana replied, unflinching. "I'll take a team of the best engineers, the brightest minds, and we'll figure it out. We'll save Syriax." The room erupted in murmurs. The Centaurians couldn't believe what they had just heard. Humanity, a species still considered by many to be in their adolescence compared to the rest of the galaxy's civilizations, was proposing to do the impossible. The audacity of it. Jorvok, seeing the challenge in Eliana's eyes, smiled, though it was a smile laced with disbelief. "Very well, human. But know this, if you fail, it will not just be your people who will pay the price. The galaxy will never forget your failure." Eliana nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. But the fire within her only grew stronger. She believed in humanity, and now she would prove to the galaxy that humans were capable of more than anyone ever imagined. As she left the council chamber, Eliana was met with whispers of doubt. The other species in the room had already decided humanity would not succeed. Their technology was primitive, their resources limited, and their track record in space exploration was far from flawless. Still, Eliana had no time for their doubts. There was no time to waste. If they were going to save Syriax, they had to start immediately. Her first call was to engineer Marcus Layton, a brilliant human mind who had worked on some of the most complex projects in the galaxy. Marcus had never built anything as ambitious as this, but he had seen Eliana's determination before, and he trusted her. "Marcus, we need to save Syriax," Eliana said when he answered the call. "We have no choice." Marcus didn't hesitate. "You're right. We can't wait around for someone else to solve this. Let's do it." The first steps were taken, but there was no time to waste. As Eliana and her team began planning, The rest of the galaxy watched, waiting for them to fail. Every species, from the largest to the smallest, knew that no one could achieve what they had set out to do. Meanwhile, the Zentorians continued to mock the humans. They watched with amusement as Ileana and her team began working on their plans. They believed it was impossible, and they were confident that humanity would soon realize the same. But Ileana, standing at the front of a team that was anything but ordinary, had only one thought on her mind: proving them wrong. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it was time to show them that humans had an undeniable power, the power of determination. The challenge had been set, and humanity had stepped forward to face it head-on. No one believed they could succeed, but no one truly understood the human spirit. It wasn't just about building a structure or finding a solution. It was about proving that no challenge was too great for humanity to overcome. The real battle had just begun, and in the silence that followed, the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. Suspense. Could Ileana and her team succeed where all others had failed? Or was this the beginning of humanity's greatest defeat? The answers were just beginning to unfold. Building the dream. As days passed, the team assembled under Ileana's leadership. The scope of the task before them was almost unimaginable, a colossal structure to stabilize Syriax's dying core, something no one had ever attempted before. But Ileana wasn't afraid. She had a vision. With each passing hour, the team worked tirelessly to turn that vision into reality. The team consisted of humans from all walks of life: engineers, architects, and physicists. Each one selected for their brilliance and their determination to defy the odds. They set up their base on a barren moon orbiting Syriax, where they could begin planning and developing their technology. Marcus Layton, the lead engineer, wasted no time. We need to design a structure that can absorb the energy from the planet's core. It has to be strong, flexible, and able to adjust to shifts in the planet's magnetic fields, he explained to the team. They worked around the clock, poring over blueprints, calculations, and simulations. But even as they worked, doubts crept in. The humans had no access to the advanced technology of the Zentorians, the galaxy's oldest and most powerful empire. They had no access to the powerful energy sources the Zentorians controlled. All they had were their minds, their hands, and their will to succeed. "Do you really think we can pull this off?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Knox, one of Ileana's most trusted officers, as she looked over the plans. "I mean, the Zentorians are laughing at us. This is crazy." Ileana looked out at the vast expanse of space, her gaze steady. "We may not have their technology, but we have something better: the ability to adapt and think outside the box. If we can't rely on their resources, we'll create our own." And that was exactly what they did. They began scavenging, gathering raw materials from nearby moons and asteroids. They used Earth's space exploration technology and combined it with innovative ideas of their own. It wasn't perfect, but it was something the galaxy had never seen before, a combination of human ingenuity and sheer determination. Ileana's team also focused on the creation of a gravity field generator to stabilize the planet's core and to generate energy for the structure. It was a risky idea, one that many had told them was impossible. But for humans, the idea of the impossible was just a challenge waiting to be conquered. Despite the technological setbacks, the team started making progress. The first prototype of the generator was ready, and they tested it on a smaller scale. It worked. Not perfectly, but it worked. Ileana felt a spark of hope. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. However, as they advanced, the Zentorians grew more vocal in their doubts. Ambassador Zarev, the official representative of the Zentorian Empire, sent a transmission to the team. "Humanity's attempts are futile. You are wasting your resources and your time. You cannot save this planet." His words stung, but Ileana's resolve only grew stronger. She knew that every moment she spent working was a moment they got closer to saving Syriax. By now, the world was watching. News of humanity's efforts to stabilize the planet spread throughout the galaxy, and the galaxy's citizens began to take sides. Many laughed at the humans, calling them naive. Others admired their persistence. Some even started betting on how long it would take before the humans would give up. It was impossible, they said. They were merely delaying the inevitable. But Ileana and her team refused to give in to the pressure. They couldn't afford to. They didn't just have the fate of Syriacs riding on their shoulders. They had humanity's reputation as well. As the days turned into weeks, the team began to see results. The gravity field generator grew more stable, and the designs for the stabilization structure began to take shape. They weren't just building a machine. They were crafting a lifeline. The structure was no longer just a concept. It was becoming real. But even as they worked, there was a looming question. Could they finish in time? With every passing moment, Syriax's core was cooling, its atmosphere growing thinner. The countdown to failure seemed to tick louder with every minute. The pressure of time weighed heavily on the team. Every engineer and scientist felt it, and they knew the entire galaxy was watching. Every failure was a nail in the coffin of their mission, and every success felt like a miracle. But the idea of giving up wasn't even a possibility in Ileana's mind. "The clock's ticking," she said to the team during one of their brief moments of rest. "We don't get to choose when the impossible becomes possible. We choose to make it happen." The stakes were high. The future of Syriacs, and the future of humanity's reputation, depended on their success. They had no room for failure. The task was monumental, but the spark of hope continued to grow, as did their belief in each other and in the human spirit. They weren't just building a structure. They were building a legacy. The more they worked, the more they realized that they weren't just proving themselves to the galaxy. They were proving something even bigger, that humanity could face any challenge, no matter how impossible, and come out victorious. Suspense. As the team raced against the clock, doubts began to fade, replaced by determination. But with the deadline fast approaching, could they complete the impossible in time? The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Unexpected obstacles. Just as the team began to see the fruits of their labor, disaster struck. What they had thought would be the smoothest phase of the project quickly turned into a nightmare. The first real test of their resolve came when the critical machinery, designed to support the gravity field generator, began malfunctioning. What was once a promising prototype now became a ticking time bomb. "Status report," Ileana called out as she rushed into the control room. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her voice remained calm. She had learned long ago that panic was the enemy of progress. Marcus Layton, lead engineer, looked up from the control panel, his face pale. "It's the power converters. They failed. We're not going to be able to power up the generator unless we fix this." Ileana's heart sank. The generator had been their key to stabilizing the planet's core. Without it, the entire project would collapse. The pressure to fix this was enormous, and time was running out. They had only a few weeks before Syriacs would be beyond saving. "We can't afford this, Marcus," Ileana said, her voice tight. "We've come too far. Is there anything we can do?" Marcus rubbed his face in frustration. "We're going to need parts we don't have, Ileana. We need advanced energy converters. Things we can't make on our own." Ileana's mind raced. The nearest planets that could provide those parts were controlled by the Zentorians, the same empire that had already condemned the mission as impossible. Asking them for help was out of the question. There was no way the Zentorians would provide anything for a project they had already deemed doomed. But then Ileana remembered something, an old space station that had once belonged to a long-dead civilization. It was a relic, abandoned for centuries, but it was said to contain technology that no one had ever fully explored. Perhaps, just perhaps, it held the parts they needed. She turned to her team. "We're going to need to make a detour. I've got an idea." With no time to lose, the team quickly readied themselves for the journey to the ancient station. Located on the edge of the galaxy, The station had been rumored to be filled with advanced technology, but it was also located in a treacherous area, far from any known supply routes. The dangers were unknown, but they had no other choice. As they traveled through deep space, their ship rattled from minor system failures caused by the extended strain of their journey. The detour was taking a toll on their resources, and there was no guarantee they would make it to the station in one piece. With every passing moment, the threat of failure loomed larger. When they finally reached the station, they discovered that the rumors were true. There was advanced technology within, but it was scattered and hidden in a maze of decaying corridors. The station was in ruins, its systems failing one by one, and the team had to navigate through collapsed sections, broken elevators, and unstable rooms just to reach the parts they desperately needed. "We're running out of time," said Lieutenant Sarah Knox, a key member of the team. Her voice was sharp with urgency as she scanned the debris-strewn floor. "If we don't find those converters now, this whole mission is over." The team worked tirelessly, searching the remains of the station, their hands moving quickly as the pressure mounted. Hours passed, and each failure to find the right parts brought them closer to despair. But Eliana refused to give in. She wouldn't let them fail now. "Stay focused," she urged her team. "We're so close. We have to keep looking." Then, in the depths of the station, they found it. A compartment, hidden beneath layers of dust and debris, containing exactly what they needed: advanced power converters that could support the gravity field generator. The team let out a collective sigh of relief, but the journey back wasn't easy. The station's systems were failing, and the once stable pathways were now unstable. As they made their way back to their ship, an explosion rocked the station. A small fire broke out, and the team had to move quickly to escape before they were trapped. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure wasn't an option. With the converters finally in hand, they returned to their base, but the damage done to their ship and the supplies they had used for the detour left them with limited time and resources to spare. The malfunctioning parts weren't the only obstacles. They were racing against a planet that was steadily becoming more unstable with each passing moment. As the team worked to install the converters and restore the gravity field generator, the doubts from the galaxy grew louder. The Zentorians mocked them, sending transmissions that echoed in their ears. "You'll never succeed. Even with the converters, you're too far behind." But Eliana and her team didn't back down. They pressed forward, repairing and reworking their technology. Their focus never wavered, despite the mounting obstacles that seemed determined to break them. Suspense. The clock was ticking. With the generators finally in place, the team prepared for the most critical test yet. Could they stabilize Syriax's core in time, or had the delays and failures doomed their mission? The doubts of the galaxy grew louder with every passing minute, but Eliana's belief in her team remained unshaken. They had overcome so much, and now they would face their greatest test yet: turning the tide. The human team had just survived their most critical hurdle, but the true test was still ahead. With the gravity field generator now functioning, their next challenge was to implement the technology that would stabilize Syriax's core. The project's success depended on the precision and power of the structure they were building, a massive device that would funnel energy directly into the planet's heart, reversing its core's cooling process. Though the journey to retrieve the power converters had been a success, it wasn't without its cost. The detour had drained their resources, and the pressure was mounting. The once hopeful atmosphere in the team had been replaced by exhaustion and anxiety. They had a working generator, but would it be enough to stabilize the planet in time? Eliana stood in the control room, staring at the large holoscreens displaying the calculations, the readouts, and the ticking countdown. Time was running out. Syriax's core was still cooling, and its atmosphere was quickly becoming uninhabitable. The fate of billions rested on their shoulders. "We don't have much time," Marcus Layton said, his voice low as he looked over the final schematic of the stabilization structure. "Once we power up the generator and connect it to the core, It has to be perfect. If anything goes wrong, we'll overload the system. The entire planet could explode. The team gathered in the briefing room, staring at the digital map of Syriax. It was an advanced simulation showing the planet's core, its unstable core structure, and the energy channels they had planned to create. It was as complex as anything any species had ever attempted. Ileana looked around at her team. They were tired, their faces etched with the stress of endless work and pressure, but their eyes still held that spark. She knew they could do this. They had to. "We can make it work," she said, her voice steady but full of resolve. "We're not giving up. We came this far together. Now we're going to finish it." With that, the team moved into action. They began connecting the gravity field generator to the central power hub, ensuring the flow of energy would be directed precisely to the heart of Syriax's dying core. Every step had to be calculated. Every move had to be perfect. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The hum of machines filled the air as they worked in synchronized precision. Engineers monitored the energy levels, scientists adjusted the magnetic fields, and technicians calibrated the gravity well. The core itself was a volatile, shifting force, and every decision could make or break the mission. Then came the critical moment, the moment of truth. The team powered up the generator, and for a moment, nothing happened. The screen showed no change. The energy levels were static. There was a tense silence in the control room, as everyone held their breath, hoping against hope that their efforts hadn't been in vain. And then, the first sign of life appeared, a small pulse of energy. It was faint, but it was there. "It's working," shouted Marcus. The relief in his voice was palpable, but they knew they weren't out of the woods yet. This was only the beginning. The team continued adjusting the system, amplifying the energy and guiding it toward the planet's core. The pulse grew stronger, and the screens displayed a rise in Syriax's core temperature. Slowly, but surely, the process of stabilizing the planet had begun. Outside, the skies over Syriax began to change. The once dying atmosphere began to show signs of recovery, as the energy released from the core began to replenish the planet's atmosphere. The temperature, which had been dropping steadily for years, began to rise. Ileana watched with bated breath, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment they had worked for. This was where everything would either succeed or fail. But as the energy levels grew, something unexpected happened. The core, reacting to the influx of power, started to shift violently. The ground shook, alarms blared, and the team was thrown into chaos. "It's too much, it's overloading," screamed one of the engineers, panic rising in his voice. "We need to reduce the output, now," Marcus shouted, running to his station to try to stabilize the power. The energy flowing into the core was becoming unstable, and the generator was starting to glow a dangerous red. Ileana's mind raced. There had to be a way to adjust the system before it all came crashing down. She wasn't about to let all of their work, all of their sacrifice, go to waste. "Shut down the secondary systems," she ordered. "We need to reroute the energy. We can't let the core overload." Everyone moved in a flurry of action. The team worked in frantic synchronization, reconfiguring the power flow, rerouting the excess energy into a secondary channel. The ground continued to shake, the planet's tremors now causing cracks in the surface. Time was running out, and the fate of Syriax was hanging by a thread. After what felt like an eternity, the system finally leveled out. The energy stabilized, and the glow from the generator dimmed. The core temperature began to rise at a steady rate, not too fast, not too slow. It was working. Ileana let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She glanced at the team, seeing their exhausted but relieved faces. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stabilized Syriax's core. But the mission wasn't over yet. They still had to finish the final phase, the construction of the energy funnel that would fully sustain the planet's atmosphere. That was the next challenge, and it was just as critical as the last. Suspense. Though the core was now stabilized, the biggest part of their mission was still to come. Could they complete the last step before it was too late, or would the galaxy's doubts finally be proven right? The real battle was just beginning, and humanity's future was still hanging in the balance. The final push. The mission had reached its most critical stage. With Syriax's core stabilized, the team had bought themselves a narrow window of time, but the final task was even more daunting: to build and activate the energy funnel that would fully restore the planet's atmosphere. They had to gather energy from the core and channel it into a giant structure designed to emit it evenly across Syriax's surface. This was the last step, and if they failed, all their work would have been for nothing. The sense of urgency that had been building over the past few weeks intensified as the team prepared for the final phase. Every member was exhausted, and morale had begun to wane. Tensions were high, but through it all, Ileana remained their anchor, refusing to allow anyone to give in to fear or doubt. "Everyone, listen up." Ileana's voice rang out in the control room, cutting through the tension. "We've made it this far, and there's no turning back now. We've been told over and over that we couldn't do this, that we weren't good enough, smart enough, or powerful enough. Well, here we are. We're humans, and we've already proven them wrong." Her words struck a chord. The team, though weary, gathered their resolve. There was no option but success. Syriax's future, and the future of humanity's reputation across the galaxy, depended on their ability to complete this final task. They moved quickly, assembling the components of the energy funnel. The parts had been carefully designed and prepared during the stabilization phase, but the construction had to be flawless. They had only one chance to get it right. However, as the funnel began to take shape, a new challenge presented itself. The massive energy buildup from the core was creating unstable reactions within the structure. The funnel needed to be connected to the generator without overloading. If the connections weren't made exactly right, they risked causing a catastrophic failure that could destroy everything they had worked for. Marcus worked furiously at the console, sweat dripping from his brow. "If we don't get these conduits connected properly, we'll lose all of it," he muttered under his breath. "The funnel could collapse. The generator will overload, and the planet." "Marcus, we don't have time for doubts." Ileana snapped, though her voice was calm. "We've come this far. You know what to do. Trust the system." But as they continued working, it became clear that time wasn't their only enemy. The surface of Syriax was beginning to show signs of increasing instability. Tremors rumbled through the ground, and cracks began to form in the planetary crust. It was clear that they were running out of time. The funnel needed to be activated immediately or risk catastrophic collapse. "We're too slow," shouted Lieutenant Sarah Knox as the ground trembled again. "If we don't get the energy funnel online now," Syriax cooled. A sharp explosion echoed through the base, and the team froze. One of the outer power conduits had short-circuited, causing a temporary power failure. For a moment, everything went dark, and panic began to creep into the air. Ileana's heart raced. The mission had been so close, but now they were on the edge of losing it all. "What happened?" she demanded. "Secondary power systems are down," Marcus replied, voice tight with stress. "We've lost control of the auxiliary grid. It's going to take us hours to fix it." But Ileana wasn't willing to let this final hurdle stop them. "We don't have hours. We have minutes." Thinking quickly, she looked around the room. There had to be another way. Her gaze locked on a console that was still functioning. It wasn't much, but it was enough to initiate a backup power relay. "We're going to reroute the energy from the backup systems manually. Everyone, stay calm and work fast. We're not losing this planet." The team sprang into action, running from station to station, bypassing systems that were designed for emergencies. Their hands moved with precision, guided by years of experience and the hope that Syriax was still worth saving. Minutes felt like hours as they worked, the room filled with the hum of machines, the clicking of tools, and the murmurs of the team working through the crisis. Finally, the power grid flickered back to life. The backup systems were online, and they could begin rerouting energy again. "Ileana, we're ready to power up," Marcus said, breathing heavily. "This is it. One last shot." Ileana didn't hesitate. "Do it." The energy funnel powered up, slowly at first, then with growing intensity. The ground beneath them trembled as the first burst of energy flowed from the core through the funnel and into the atmosphere. There was no time to wonder if it would work, only time to watch and wait. The team held their breath as the massive structure began to hum, slowly stabilizing the planet's atmosphere. The temperature on Syriac started to rise, and the once-dead sky began to glow with life. The structure was channeling the energy evenly, repairing the planet's broken systems. Slowly but surely, Syriac was coming back to life. "We did it," Marcus whispered, staring at the screens. The core was stable. The planet's atmosphere was replenishing. It was working. The team stood in silence for a moment, watching the fruits of their labor unfold before their eyes. The impossible had become possible. They had succeeded. Suspense. The mission was a success. Syriac was saved, and the galaxy would soon know of humanity's triumph. But could the humans hold on to their hard-won victory, or would there be unexpected consequences that could jeopardize everything they had worked for? The galaxy was watching, and humanity had proven they were more than just survivors. They were innovators, dreamers, and now they had a new reputation to defend, proving them wrong. The moment Syriac began to stabilize, the entire galaxy held its breath. The energy funnel was working, and the once-dying planet's core was being replenished, its atmosphere repaired. For the first time in years, the skies over Syriac glowed with life again. It was a sight that no one, not even the most hopeful beings, had thought possible. As the planet began to heal, the humans who had once been seen as incapable now stood as the galaxy's most unexpected heroes. News spread like wildfire. Humanity had not only defied the odds, but they had reshaped the future of an entire planet. The mission that had been labeled impossible was a success, and humanity had proven that no challenge, no matter how enormous, was beyond their reach. The Zentorians, who had scoffed at the humans and declared their efforts doomed from the start, were silent. The other species that had doubted them were now forced to acknowledge the impossible feat humanity had accomplished. For years, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had claimed that certain challenges were beyond anyone's capabilities. But the humans had shattered that belief. Ambassador Zarif, who had mocked Ileana and her team, was the first to send a transmission of recognition. "We have seen the impossible made possible," his voice echoed in the communication room, heavy with an unspoken respect. "Humanity has shown us all that there are no limits, only possibilities. The Zentorian Empire acknowledges your success." Ileana, standing before her team, looked at the message. She had expected nothing but derision, but instead, the galaxy was acknowledging them as equals. The pride she felt was tempered with the weight of what they had accomplished. They hadn't just saved Syriac, they had fundamentally changed how the galaxy saw humanity. As the days passed, the celebrations began. The news was broadcasted across every known galaxy, and while some species still couldn't believe it, others couldn't help but admire the humans' grit, determination, and creativity. The accomplishments of Ileana and her team would go down in history as one of the greatest triumphs in the universe. But even as humanity basked in its newfound respect, Ileana knew that this was only the beginning. Their success on Syriac had proven to the galaxy that humans were not just resilient. They were capable of anything they set their minds to. The rest of the universe might have underestimated them, but the humans knew better. Now, Ileana said to her team, as they gathered in the control room to review the final report, "We've just set a precedent. It's not enough to be seen as capable. We have to keep proving ourselves. This is only the first step." Her voice was firm, but there was a glint of pride in her eyes. The galaxy now knew humanity could rise to any occasion, and there would be no going back. Their reputation had changed forever. Suspense. The story of Syriax's salvation had ended, but the story of humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. As Ileana and her team returned to Earth as heroes, the universe began to wonder what humanity's next great challenge would be. One thing was certain. Humanity's future would be filled with impossible dreams, ones that they would continue to make possible. In the silence of the control room, Ileana looked out at the stars. "We did it," she whispered, knowing that the galaxy had underestimated them once. But it wouldn't happen again. The challenge had been great, but humanity had proven that there were no limits to what they could achieve. The impossible was no longer just a dream. It was a reality they had built, and this was just the beginning.